Hey, welcome back. It's Mr. Shrum, and we're going to look at the nervous system. And we looked at this last semester in terms of anatomy and what parts went where, how they interact with each other. And now we're going to look at physiology, and it'll be slightly different this time around. But the first lesson is nervous system function. So what does it do? We refer to it as the command center for the body. Through a series of electrical impulses, the nervous system is able to give and receive messages. And it's not isolated to one area of the body. It's present in every area of your body. And that's because the nervous system has very important functions. And here they are. The nervous system evaluates internal and external information to make any necessary adjustments. So it'll look at your body, inside and outside of your body, and then make any necessary adjustments or suitable arrangements. So if your body's too cold, it'll heat your body up, and among other things. The nervous system is responsible for all movements and activities within the body. The nervous system regulates what we learn and remember. And there are two systems in our body that act as communication systems. We have the nervous system and the endocrine system. The nervous system transmits messages through electrical impulses, which allow for quick responses. The endocrine system transmits messages through the release of hormones. That is a slow process, but the effects are longer lasting. So slow to start, but longer lasting overall. The nervous system is able to function because of neurons. Neurons are these specialized cells that organize and carry out electrical impulses. Neurolia are accessory cells that support those neurons. And here's a picture of the neuron. So if you remember the axon, how we refer to this as the axon, the nucleus here, mitochondrion, these little branches are dendrites, and then the axon terminal synapse at the very end. And we'll focus on three parts: the dendrite, the cell body, and the axon. The dendrite conducts nerve impulses toward the nerve cell. So dendrites are conducting nerve impulses toward the nerve cell. So these are coming in towards the cell body. The cell body contains the cell nucleus and other organelles. Then the axon conducts nerve impulses away from the cell. So if you're having trouble remembering which comes into the cell and then what goes out of the cell, dendrites come into the cell, axons conduct nerve impulses away. So axon A, away. And there are three different functional types of neurons. We have sensory neurons, motor neurons, and then interneurons. Sensory neurons take messages from sense organs to the CNS, or the central nervous system. They have a long dendrite and a short axon. Motor neurons take messages from the CNS to a muscle fiber or gland. They have a short dendrite and a long axon. Pictured here. Interneurons are only located in the CNS. They convey messages within the central nervous system. Their axons and dendrites may be long or short, so they could be either or. Neurolia are accessory cells that support neurons. Neurolia cells produce a lipid protein substance called myelin. The neurolia cells work together to wrap a myelin sheath around the axons and dendrites. And these sheaths cause the electrical impulses to travel faster. And the sheath is separated into sections. You can see that here. That's one section, that's another section, that's another section. The gaps between the sections are known as the nodes of Ranvier.
Nervous system function.
Oop,
Nerve.
just kidding. Let's see.
Nodes of Ranvier.
Yeah,
9.
Ranvier. A nerve is a collection of neuron fibers. Structurally, the nervous system is divided into the central nervous system, the CNS, and the peripheral nervous system, or PNS. The central nervous system is comprised of the brain and your spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system includes the cranial nerve and the spinal nerves. The cranial nerves originate from the brain. Spinal nerves originate from the spinal cord. So hopefully that's easy to understand and differentiate. And then we divide that further into somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. Somatic, autonomic. The somatic nervous system carries impulses to and from the CNS to skeletal muscle tissue. Its primary function is to produce skeletal muscle movements. So it's trying to move the muscles. The autonomic nervous system carries impulses to and from the rest of the body. So examples are your heart, digestive system, and glands. The autonomic nervous system is comprised of the parasympathetic system and the sympathetic system. The structures and functions of the nervous system are extremely important to the entire body. Structurally, the nervous system is divided into the CNS and the PNS, and the PNS is divided into the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. And that's it for the first lesson. Let's get back. And then look at the function of the central nervous system. The CNS is comprised of the spinal cord and the brain, like we said. And both the spinal cord and brain are very important. And in order to protect these structures, they are surrounded by bony structures, so the skull or the vertebral column, the meninges. There are 3 layers, the dura mater, the arachnoid mater, and the pia mater, and cerebrospinal fluid. And that's a clear liquid, and it circulates around the brain and spinal cords. And all of these prevent damage to these systems unless you suffer like a really severe injury. Let's see.
Meninges. There are 3 layers. Dura mater, arachnoid mater, pia mater, cerebrospinal fluid.
Meninges. Okay. The spinal cord is directly connected to the brain and extends inferiorly down through the body. It has 2 functions. It is the center for many reflex actions. It transmits communication between the brain and radiating spinal nerves. The brain is the command center for your body. Each part of the brain has a special role to do. The brain is divided into three main sections: forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. The forebrain is the anterior portion, the front part of the brain. It's the largest portion of the brain, and it has many vital functions such as thinking, talking, sensory processing, body temperature, heartbeat, and emotions. And we divide the forebrain into two sections: the telencephalon and the diencephalon. You can see that here. Telencephalon, and then this within it, the diencephalon. The telencephalon is the section of the forebrain that contains the cerebrum. The cerebrum is the largest portion of the brain. In fact, it's responsible for about 80% of the mass of the brain. And it's divided into two hemispheres, the right hemisphere and the left. The right hemisphere controls movement of the left side of the body, and it also regulates spatial and artistic skills. The left hemisphere controls movements of the right side of the body, and it manages analytical and verbal skills, such as reading, writing, and arithmetic. The two hemispheres are connected by the corpus callosum. And we have four primary lobes of the cerebrum. We have the frontal lobe, that's the red part right here, the parietal lobe, which is the green parts here, the temporal lobe, which is the blue part here, and the occipital lobe, which is the yellow part. The frontal lobe is responsible for the control of voluntary movement and cognitive functions such as reasoning, planning, emotions, problem solving. The parietal lobe is responsible for processing information about temperature, taste, touch, movement. The temporal lobe is responsible for hearing and processing memories. It also links memories to tastes, sounds, sights, and touch. The occipital lobe is responsible for vision. Diencephalon is the portion of the forebrain that contains the thalamus, the hypothalamus, and the pituitary gland. All right there. And the thalamus is a large oval mass below the cerebral hemispheres, and it acts as a relay center for sensory impulses, except for the sense of smell. That's handled elsewhere. But this is where all the sensory impulses, how your body picks up on those sensory impulses, is through the thalamus. And the hypothalamus is a small part of the diencephalon located inferiorly to the thalamus. Although the hypothalamus is small, it has some very big responsibilities. The hypothalamus regulates heartbeat, body temperature, fluid retention, how much fluid your body has, hunger, thirst, emotions, endocrine functions. And the pituitary gland is attached inferiorly to the hypothalamus and produces several hormones. That was the forebrain, and now we're looking at the midbrain. And it's a small section in the center part of the brain, located just superior to the pons, just above the pons. And the pons is a section in your hindbrain. The midbrain is also known as the mesencephalon. It's responsible for visual and auditory reflexes, posture, and movement. The hindbrain is the posterior portion of the brain. So at the very back, it's divided into the metencephalon and the myencephalon. The pons and cerebellum reside in the metencephalon. The pons is the rounded protrusion inferior to the brain, and it helps with breathing and relaying messages. Cerebellum is the second largest structure of the brain. In Latin, it stands for little brain. The cerebellum is located in the inferior posterior portion of the brain. And here, the cerebellum coordinates movement, balance, and posture. The myelencephalon houses the medulla oblongata, and this is a portion of the brainstem that is connected to the pons and the spinal cord. Its functions include sensory relay for the cranial nerves. It regulates heartbeat, blood pressure, and breathing. It controls sneezing, coughing, swallowing, and vomiting. The medulla oblongata is also where the nerve fibers of each hemisphere cross over. This allows the right hemisphere to receive and send information to the left side of the body, and vice versa. So in conclusion, we have three main sections of the brain, and those sections are divided into 5 portions of the brain that contain important structures. The forebrain is divided into the telencephalon and the diencephalon. The telencephalon contains the cerebrum. The diencephalon contains the thalamus, the hypothalamus, and the pituitary gland. The midbrain is also known as the mesencephalon, and it's right here. The hindbrain is divided into the metencephalon and the myelencephalon. And the metencephalon contains the pons and cerebellum. The myelencephalon contains the medulla oblongata. All right, and that's it for the CNS. And next time I will look at the functions of the peripheral nervous system. But until next time, have a great day and enjoy the rest of your week. See you next time.